Todd Kolb, Director of Instruction for USGolfTV and the Todd Kolb Golf Academy. Today we're going live here, our first time going live on YouTube, and something we're going to be doing periodically over the course of the season here, kind of trying it out. Hopefully you have our subscribers out there, if you're watching this right now, something you're going to like, give you an opportunity to ask a few questions, have some dialogue back and forth, and continue to educate and kind of share some ideas, things you like that we do, maybe things that you disagree with, and just kind of try to advance all of us as golfers moving forward. So today, it's pretty chilly outside here in our main location. So we're inside the academy today because you would not want to see us outside because it's awful chilly. And I wanted to start today in our first one here talking about chipping, and we did a video about 3 or 4 months ago called 3 Big Chipping Mistakes That Amateur Golfers Make. And man, oh man, it took off. It took off like crazy. Well over 600,000 views in just a few months. And I don't want to say it created some controversy, but I think it created some questions for people in their own mind about what are they doing when they're chipping. And so I'm going to dive into that a little bit. And if you're watching this right now, I'd love to hear from you. Comment on something maybe that you liked that we did, or maybe you didn't like related to this topic, and let's see if we can get some questions answered. So we'll kind of dive into it, we'll see where it goes, and hopefully you'll kind of learn something and enjoy it. So chipping is something that I'm really passionate about because chipping differentiates. And what I mean by that is if you look at golfers, and one golfer chips the golf ball to 2 feet, and one chips it to maybe 8 or 9 feet, visually it doesn't look like a whole lot of difference. But the reality of it is it's huge because when you chip it close enough to just have a nice little tap in, that literally saves you a stroke. And so chipping differentiates. There is no middle of the road. You're either really good at chipping or you're not good at chipping. And so it's something that we spend a lot of time working on with our golfers. So when we talked about chipping mistakes, when I did that video initially, one of the things that I see a lot of golfers make, mistake they make, is they get the handle way too far in front. Not only in the setup, but through the motion. And we had a lot of debate. A lot of people, kind of fired back at us, which I like to hear about. Well, what about the Phil Mickelson hinge and hold method? Because who's gonna argue? I'm certainly not gonna sit here in a position to argue with Phil Mickelson about the short game. The guy's arguably one of the greatest players of all time, and probably the greatest short game of all time. So, but just because it works for somebody like that who has, probably the hands that were given to him by, his creator, so to speak, that are just one in a lifetime, doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be the best method for the average person. And so I want to talk a little bit about that hinge and hold versus what we teach. So the biggest mistake, first of all, that I see a lot of golfers make is they de-loft the golf club. Now let me tell you why I'm not a big fan of de-lofting the golf club. Because when you de-loft the golf club, you take the leading edge and you move it down and you move it forward. So what happens when you do that is you lose the bounce of the golf club. So the bounce of the golf club, which is on the bottom right here, is this curve. And we're not going to dive deep into all the design on it, but basically what you want to know is that bounce is good. Bounce makes the shot easier. That's why they put that on there. We discussed that at pretty good length in the video that I'm referencing here. So, but when you take the club and you move it forward, you de-loft it. So you basically are taking away the bounce. And that's fine if you're very precise in where you hit the golf ball, but it takes your margin of error and it really shrinks it. So that's the first reason I'm not a big fan of the hinge and hold, because when you hinge it and then you hold it, yes, you're de-lofting it, which in its own way I'm not a big fan of, but more importantly, you start using the leading edge. And when you're hitting a chip shot, there's not a lot of speed there. And so when the club hits the ground, it just sticks. So even when I'm here, we're inside, I'm just on the AstroTurf here, when I take this club back, okay, and if I hinge it and I hold it, even in AstroTurf, it kind of grabs. Now, what I would suggest that you do is you let the club swing. So you let the club head kind of catch up a little bit. So at impact, you create what I would call a neutral position where the club head and the handle kind of match up. Now, a little bit of forward shafting is fine. Okay, and I'm certainly, let me be very clear about this, we're certainly not advocating okay, that the handle's way behind that impact. We're not advocating that. Okay, now there are shots where that, you know, like a greenside bunker shot, high and soft. We did some videos on that also on how to hit a nice high soft bunker shot. That you might actually like that there. But check that out if you have problems with your bunker play. But we want to promote a neutral position, okay? Because when we return to neutral, maybe the handle slightly in front, then we have the loft, but we also have the bounce on the club that we're looking for. So that's why I'm not a big fan of the hinge and hold. And obviously it works, like we said, for Phil Mickelson. I'm not going to argue that, okay? I'm not going down that road. But for the average golfer, when you're not using the bounce, what happens is that you're shrinking your spot that you can actually, for your margin of error. So that's the main thing. So how do people typically deal off the golf club? Let's dive into that a little bit. Typically they'll do it in their setup initially. They'll move the ball back in their stance, and they'll get their hands way in front. So they'll de-loft it to begin with. So unless you have a really bad lie or a unique situation, I would recommend the ball just ever so slightly back of center. So if this was center, this would be slightly back, and the hands ever so slightly in front. That's what I would suggest you start with on a normal type chip shot. So that's the first place that they could do it. The second place that they could do it would be in the actual motion itself. So you'll see a lot of players, even really good players, might set up neutral, but then in the motion, they kind of have what I would call like a down cock, where they're kind of here, and then they cock the club, or they hinge the club in the downswing motion. So they're here, they're pretty good, and then they hinge it on the downward, and then they get that forward shaft leaning too much. So that's another area where you want to watch out for that. So the checkpoint that I would use would be when you finish your swing, your little chipping motion, that the butt of the club pretty much points right at your belt buckle. That would be a pretty good basic spot for you. So I'm set up pretty neutral, ball slightly back of center, just a tad, hands are ever so slightly in front, and then boom, when I finish the shot, butt of the club points at the belt buckle. And that would not only get you set up neutral to begin with, but also keep you neutral through the shot. So hopefully that kind of makes sense. Now, I want to talk about one other thing, and this is a real, I don't want to say it's a secret, but it's something that a lot of people do not know, especially weekend golfers when it comes to any shot in golf. Any shot in golf. But we're going to specifically right now talk about chipping, because that's where I see it come into play most often. And that is the direction of the swing and how that impacts where the club hits the ground. All right, so what do I mean by that? Well, from your angle right there, I'm going to do this in two different angles, so kind of bear with me right now. I don't want this to get too complicated, so just kind of walk through me here. So when I set up here, right, neutral position, and I swing the club straight back and straight through, what you'll notice is that the club basically hits the ground right in the middle of my feet, okay? Now, the more I start to swing the club in to out, what you'll notice is the club starts hitting the ground back behind my right foot. And as I start to neutralize that swing shape, that swing direction, more straight back, straight through, ball goes in the center, and I start to go out to in, the bottom of the swing starts to go forward. Alright, so I want you to wrap your head around that a little bit, thinking about the shape of the swing and how that impacts where the club hits the ground. Now, let me switch angles on that, because it might be a little bit easier to see from this angle right here. So I'm set in pretty neutral. And when I swing this club basically straight back and straight through, the club hits the ground, kind of right in between my feet. Alright, as I start to move it inside to out, you'll notice that it starts getting back behind here. Okay, and as I go back to neutral, and now I'm going to start going the other way, now I'm going out to in, now I'm hitting over here on the putting turf. Okay, so when you swing the club, we're talking about chipping. But the same concept is true with any club. Drive around down to chipping. Okay, that the direction of the swing can have a huge impact on where the club bottoms out or where it hits the ground, which is that's a whole other video we'll probably talk about at some point, or if you want us to do something on that, be sure to let us know in the comments or whatever. But if you want to talk about some stuff, so it looks like we got a question here.
Yeah, we had somebody asking what kind of yardage are we talking about using these methods?
Oh,
where
great. Yeah, great. Thanks, Nick. Great question. Okay, thank you for asking that, because that's an area where I've had a lot of people say, well, wait a minute, Todd, you're talking about a pitch shot versus a chip shot. That's the hinge, that's a great. So here's how I define this. Now, I'm open to all suggestions on this, because quite frankly, in the golf industry, there is no what's a chip shot, what's a pitch shot? Okay, and then we'll talk about specifically what you said about for distances there. So when I think of a pitch shot, this is me, okay? This is me. When I think of a pitch shot, I think of a shot where the length of swing, the required length of swing is for the hands to have to get above waist high. If I have to make a swing where my hands get above waist high on both sides of the golf ball, to me that's a pitch shot. If I'm hitting a shot where my hands are going to basically stay waist high or below, that's a chip shot. So what we're talking about right here now, really I would say is any shot around the green, upwards of 20 or 25 yards, something like that. I don't think it'd be much further than that. So it's typically shots, pretty close to around the green. And so hopefully that kind of answers your question. Now, some people will define chipping versus pitching based on the trajectory. So they'll say a chip shot is a low runner. That's why that's usually the fallback, quite frankly, when they go to the hinge and hold, like, hey, hinge and hold. So that's usually like a low runner, and they think of a pitch shot as something that's high and soft. That's okay. I mean, I get that point. To me, I relate it more to the length of swing and the distance the ball is traveling than the trajectory. Anything around the green, I'm thinking of a chip shot. And so that's a great question. So if anybody else got any questions, be sure to fire them. Hopefully that answers what you're looking for there. So back to this point here about the swing direction. So what I want you to take away from that is your swing direction, okay, can have a huge impact on where the club hits the ground or where it bottoms out. All right, and so if you swing in to out, it's going to move behind you. If you swing out to in, it's going to move in front of you. So hopefully that kind of answers your question there. Now, the one tip that I've used, I mean, I don't want to say it's a secret tip, but I use it all the time, and it works without fail when people are really struggling with their chipping. Because I get a lot of people call me who are they're just not, they're struggling with their chipping, and 99% of the time, okay, this is why I'm passionate about it, is because they're really hinging it and they're de-locked from the golf club. And so the tip that I give them, this would be the tip that I would give you, is, and we've had great success. Like I said, if you start reading through the comments on that video that we did, the 3 big chipping mistakes, you'll see, I mean, literally almost hundreds of comments about how it's changed their chipping. Is that when you initiate the chip shot, make sure you take the butt end of the club and move that first. So when you initiate your golf swing, or your chip shot, push the butt end of the club, or feel like it moves away versus going towards. Anytime the butt end of the club goes towards the target, and the club head goes away from the target, you're going to run into some problems with your chipping, in my opinion. So hopefully that answers some of the questions that we've had there. Like I said, this is our first time doing some, the YouTube live video, and what we want to do is we want to talk about our most popular video that we've had to date, and that is this one on chipping. So here's a quick recap. Basically, bounce is good, bounces the curve on the bottom of the golf club. When the club is in a neutral position, you're utilizing the bounce and the loft. When you de-loft the golf club, yes, the ball comes out lower, which is in its own way, I think it creates some problems, but more importantly, you're starting using the leading edge, and you can really get yourself into some difficult situations. Be aware of where you're at in your setup. Be aware of how you're going into the motion. If you feel like it's in the motion that's getting you off, use this little checkpoint where the butt end of the club points at the belt buckle when you finish. And last but not least, just have some awareness of the shape of your swing. If you swing it in to out, you're going to tend to bottom out behind it. If you swing it out to in, it'll be in front. And what I would suggest, I would recommend, is that it's just more straight back and straight through. So hopefully that answers some questions and maybe clears up some of our debate about the hinge and hold versus the method that we teach. And hopefully you learned a couple things. So we'll look forward to doing this again. Something we're going to be trying out on a regular basis. I appreciate you watching. We appreciate you subscribing to our channel. And if you got any further questions or comments, be sure to post them in there. So we appreciate it.